This follows a day yesterday when we looked at each of the individual mechanisms. We talked about national level implementation, and now we're going to start looking outside of the mechanisms more broadly at other parts of the UN system, and we are ably strengthened and able to do that with our three panelists who have extensive experience both in Geneva, in New York and in the field. I have asked each of the panelists to restrict their remarks to 10 to 12 minutes each, and then hopefully that will enable us to have a good discussion. And we are going to start with Professor Bertrand Ramcharan, who is at the International Human Rights Law, Geneva Graduate Institute of International Studies, and Bertrand is known to many of you. He's also the former Acting High Commissioner for Human Rights. Bertrand, over to you.
Thank you very much, and let me say that it's a great pleasure to see you again and to participate under your chairpersonship. And I'm also pleased to see many of my former colleagues and friends. And let me congratulate the three organizations that have invited that have organized this meeting. And I don't do this in a performance manner. First of all, I read the study from Judgment and Justice, and I learned a lot from this study. It's an important study. And I happen to be part of the advisory panel, or whatever it's called, of Chad's study, and I think that that's a very worthwhile study, and I don't know where his young colleague is, but there she is. I told her that the statistical materials that are in this study are really quite good. And then third, yesterday, when I listened to Mr. Hamamoun, I really learned a lot, and I was struck, if I may say so, by 2 points that you made, which are relevant to this discussion. First of all, the possible need for thematic approaches, and secondly, one needs to guard against the dangers of fragmentation in what one is doing there. And I refer back to these themes a bit later. Time presses, so let me just say the following. Our panel is expected to look at how other parts of the UN system can be involved in facilitating implementation of recommendations of the three mechanisms. And I would like to ask you to keep in your mind's eye three words: concepts, cooperation, and confidence. And I'd like to address each of these in turn. Building on Mr. Hamamoun's presentation yesterday about the need, I hope, j'espère que je prononce votre nom bien. C'est bien, Monsieur Hamamoun. Building on your point yesterday about the possible need for a thematic approach, when one is thinking of calling in aid the support of agencies of the United Nations system, it is important to have strategic concepts that one can invite them to rally on, because if one can't sell them strategic concepts, they will not come on the terrain with you. And I would like to ask you to think in terms of the following strategic concepts, which have already been in your discussion, and in some ways I'm recapitulating, but I will add one. First of all, the concept of a national protection system for every country. And we don't have time I don't have time to present this concept to you, but Secretary General Annan, in his famous Action Point 2, in the second reform program, invited the organizations of the United Nations system to help to contribute to the strengthening of national protection systems in every country. And he defined a national protecting system, or rather he defined it through me. And I gave it 6 components: constitutional, legislative, judicial, institutional, educational, and preventive. So I would ask you, related to that, and this was already in your discussion, to keep in mind the concept of national preventive mechanisms. And the professor from Bristol, I don't know if she's still here, I didn't get a chance to meet her, she's gone. But she spoke at some length about that yesterday. And I'm splitting up these things now, I have to say, in some ways, because the second is related to the first. The role of national institutions inside the country, and I will not dwell more on them. And then fourthly, I would ask you to think in terms of the role of judges in the implementation of recommendations of the three mechanisms. At the end of the day, it was said here this morning, at the end of the day, unless you can take the protection business within countries, one is missing the target a little bit. And unless you can get the judiciary of the country, that's a bigger discussion. When I left the office of the High Commissioner, I had taken many initiatives, but the one I regretted I did not have time to work on was how one could support national judges more to help implement human rights at home. And then I would ask you to think in terms of concepts of two more concepts. First of all, the importance of human rights education. I don't mean to offend the religious sensitivities of anyone here, but in the Christian scripture there is a line, in my Father's house are many mansions. And so one has to think of entering the different houses of human rights. And human rights education is a way of entering many countries. So I ask you to think in terms of this concept. And finally, I ask you to think in terms of national implementation of the right to development. Dear friends, we have here my good friend Ibrahim Salama. He was an independent expert. He did many things on the right to development. Dear Ibrahim, I have come to the view that in addition to the work that is going on at the international and the regional level, strategically, this concept of national implementation of the right to development has great importance. And one doesn't necessarily have to label it national implementation, but the right to development. And why do I pick this one? Because if you are to try to persuade the agencies of the United Nations system to come on board with you, development-related work can be helpful. And if you talk about economic, social, and cultural rights, it's not evident that countries will come on board with you. If you talk about the right to development and you link that to the Millennium Development Goals, that might be helpful. So these are the themes, these are the concepts and the themes that I want to place before you. Then now I want to address the second C, which is a C of confidence. When you're trying, in the United Nations system, Vitit was here and Vitit was making a case for the Security Council and whatnot, and if we had time I would have asked him, how does he think the Security Council will react to Martin China's calling for a total overhaul of the terrorism legislation of the Council? But that's neither here. What I'm saying, when you're trying to take the agencies of the United Nations system, let us, for purposes of discussion, have three sets of actors in mind. First of all, the specialized agencies. Secondly, the country teams. And thirdly, the leaders of international organizations that can be particularly helpful, like the World Bank. If you're trying to take these organizations along the road with you, they will only walk this road with you if the risks to them are not very great, and if there is a certain measure of confidence building in what you do. So now let me just tell you one little anecdote. There is something called the UN Development Group. It is one of the 4 executive committees established by Secretary General Kofi Annan. They always being on peace and security, humanitarian affairs, economic and social, and the development groups. I was doing considerable work to try to sell the development group the idea that they should help us to take forward the recommendations of treaty bodies within countries. And I had a breakfast meeting here in Geneva with Ramcharan and the members of the UN Development Group. And they were very wary of an open embrace of human rights. And I made a pitch to them and I said, look, all I'm asking you is, let me give you, country by country, a compilation of the main recommendations of the treaty bodies and the special procedures. We didn't have the UPR. And then let your people on the ground see how it is that they might be able to help implement some of these. They have to have this choice. And I want to make this point. Now that we have the UPR, with all of the good faith and the goodwill in the world, we also have some WACO recommendations in all three of these mechanisms, whether it's treaty bodies, or whether it's special procedures, or the UPR. And so what I want to caution a little bit is that the agencies of the United Nations system will not walk this road with me unless there is a measure of confidence. So now Bertrand was saying this morning that, tell me when I have 2 more minutes, and I'll stop. Bertrand himself in his remarks said, OHCHR needs to engage states. These are my notes. And then Michael and Bertrand also had a little exchange about the importance of national implementation plans. Well, I will not spend much time in telling you today that I have felt for a while that it would be useful for the human rights movement to do a world report on national protection systems. I'm phrasing this very carefully. I'm not saying a world report on the human rights situations, a world report on national protection systems in every country. And so, linking what I'm saying to confidence building in the agencies, and my own idea that let me give the agencies a consolidated set of the recommendations, country by country, and see if the country teams can help on this. I think, if I may say so, that it would be useful. I'm addressing my good friend Anders Campos, who's to my right here, and the colleagues in the OHCHR. I think it would be good for them. It would be good, it would be helpful to have a kind of a listing of the key recommendations, country by country, that can be shared with the country teams. Now we enter a little bit of difficult terrain here, and I must put this before you. If you just compile all of the recommendations, the country teams will not be able to come on board with you. I tell you that quite candidly. So you will have to be selected. Let me take my own country, Guyana, as an example. In Guyana, we've had a problem recently that within the police, there is undoubtedly a death squad, and it goes after habitual criminals. And people in the country have said, Lord, thank you for the death squad, because they're ridding us of these criminals. So when Guyana appeared before the UPR, countries and NGOs made recommendations, get rid of the death squads. I guarantee you that no UN country team would be able to engage and follow up on getting rid of the death squad. So in other words, what Bertrand said this morning is that OHCHR needs to engage states, and I think that myself that I've been very careful in not kind of giving lessons to OHCHR since I left it, but on this occasion I'd say that you will have to have a game plan for every country, and if perhaps in the discussions stage I will tell you a little bit about the ILO system. So finally, the point about cooperation. Our task is, as I said, facilitating implementation of recommendations of the 3 mechanisms. And we're looking to the UN system. So you must have some strategic concepts, I said that. You must engage in confidence building, and then cooperation. I'll end on this telling you, when I became Deputy High Commissioner, within a matter of weeks, there was a senior retreat. Mayor Robinson was the High Commissioner, and they were redrafting a mission statement for the Office of the High Commissioner. And I put into the mission statement then, I don't know if it survives today, the High Commissioner spearheads the efforts of the human rights movement for the promotion and protection of human rights. The word spearhead. And I want to use the word spearhead. In the human rights movement here, while there are many mansions in my father's house, and while there are many actors, the spearhead is the High Commissioner, and the spearhead is the Office of the High Commissioner. So quite frankly, you must know what you want to achieve in each country and with each country, and you must try to be a spearhead. Thank you. Baldwin Tusk. Thank you.